Today, we're going to grab a flashlight and head deep into our collective past. We're going to try and decode a really important piece of our cultural DNA, something we call the classics. You know, we use the word classic all the time, don't we? A classic car, classic rock, a classic novel. It kind of signals something timeless, right? A benchmark of quality. But where that idea actually comes from is way more specific and honestly, a lot more surprising than you might think.
So it turns out the word's origin has nothing to do with being old and everything to do with social class. Yep. In ancient Rome, classicus was all about the highest class of citizens. It wasn't until later that writers started applying it to literature, comparing classicus, or, first-class authors, with proletarius, the lower-class ones. So right from the get-go, the idea of a classic was tied to this idea of a hierarchy, of excellence.
Okay, so let's pivot from how we use the word every day to what it means in a formal academic sense. When you hear about a classics department at a university, this is what they're talking about. It's a deep dive into the entire world of ancient Greece and Rome, not just the famous stories, but their societies, their art, their politics, all their revolutionary ideas.
So what exactly are the classics in that academic sense? Let's get into it.
When you boil it all down, it's about these two civilizations. The ideas and the structures that came out of ancient Greece and Rome have had such a profound, lasting impact that they are truly the foundational pillars of what we often call Western civilization. And, while we often lump them together, it's so important to understand that Greece and Rome were very distinct worlds. They had their own unique contributions. So let's kind of tease them apart and see what each one brought to the table. So you can really see their different but also complementary strengths here. Greece basically gave us the software for our minds. You've got philosophy with Plato and Aristotle, the very first experiments in democracy, and these foundational literary forms like epic poetry and drama. Rome, on the other hand, gave us the hardware for society, these really practical frameworks for law, large-scale government, and an absolutely mind-boggling feats of engineering. Two totally different flavors, one massive legacy. Now, you might be thinking, okay, great poets, groundbreaking philosophers, but is that pretty much it? Well, the field is so much broader than just the great books. Let's just tackle this head on. Is this whole field just about blowing the dust off ancient scrolls? No way, not even close. That's just one piece of a much larger and, honestly, way more exciting puzzle. And this is where you really see the diverse skill set of a classicist. It's kind of like being a detective. Philology, that's like the textual forensics, making sure the words we're reading are what was actually written. Archaeology is about literally digging up clues, from pottery shards to entire cities. And then there's one of my favorites, reception studies. This one's not just about what happened back then, but how every single generation since then has reinterpreted, argued with, and been shaped by that past. It's absolutely fascinating. And that past has had a wild ride. The survival of all this knowledge, it wasn't a sure thing at all. In fact, for a while there, it looked like it might just be lost forever. I mean, this is just a dramatic story of near death and resurrection. During the Middle Ages in Europe, huge amounts of Greek philosophy and science just vanished. They were preserved only by dedicated Arabic and Latin scholars in other parts of the world. Then boom, the Renaissance, a literal rebirth, where scholars are frantically hunting down old manuscripts. Jump ahead to the 18th century, and the founders of the United States are looking directly at the Roman Republic as a model for their new nation. The big point here is that our connection to this world has constantly been broken and then reforged. Which brings us to today, because this isn't just dusty history. The fingerprints of Greece and Rome are all over our modern world, often in ways we don't even notice. Let's just start with the language we're speaking right now, words we use to define our entire society. Philosophy, democracy, republic, they aren't just old, they are direct imports from Greek and Latin. Even a word like stadium is like a little linguistic fossil, a direct echo connecting our modern sports arenas all the way back to an ancient Greek unit of measurement. It's hiding in plain sight. And it goes so much deeper than words. The very architecture of our governments, with concepts like a senate or a republic, even foundational legal ideas like the presumption of innocence, these are a direct inheritance from Roman political and legal thought. They wrestled with the exact same questions we do. How do you govern a large, diverse group of people without everything falling into chaos or tyranny?
we're still building on their answers. You know, there's this quote from T.S. Eliot that just perfectly captures the modern spirit of this field. We don't just passively receive the past like some dusty old book. Every generation brings its own questions, its own anxieties. And when we do that, we actually change what the classics even mean. So the key takeaway is this. Studying the classics isn't about idolizing some perfect golden age. It's about joining a conversation that's been going on for centuries. It's about understanding the roots of our own ideas and seeing our modern challenges reflected in the struggles of people who lived 2,000 years ago. And that brings us to our final thought. We've seen how these ancient civilizations basically provided the source code for so much of our world. So what happens if we lose the ability to read that code? What do we risk if we stop listening to their stories, their triumphs, and yeah, their warnings?